I still remember coming down to be with my body's parents before her mother got pregnant with my body. I was just a ball of energy then. I was able to read everything around at the same time. That remembrance set up the basis for how I have conducted her growth, her experiences, and how I awakened her senses to function in accordance to what I am that is connected to everything that is. Because automatically linked to my sight comes the cognizance of what is correct that expresses physically as what we call nature on this planet. Hi, Diana Ravagli here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of If You Get Lemons. I designed this space to share with you the experiences I've had with my body as the lemons I had to juice to enjoy the lemonade living I now enjoy. The information I share here covers my body's caterpillar and cocooning stages that I described to you in the previous recording as my service to human beings during this transition. I am offering these recordings from the purity of my body's heart, which I know if you're a human being, your body can hear. Through the truth about my body's living that I was guided to share openly in 2018, I was shown it's backed by and expands the information that Lynn McTaggart, Greg Brayton, Bruce Lipton, and Joe Dispenza have shared. In this manner, you will be served with the wisdom I have woven through my body that clear and harmonized her genes to upgrade her system to live in quantic frequencies on a consistent manner. In the background of me sharing what's called my past, there is another story that life and Gaia have been weaving that will be revealed as well, and tells a much wider story that extends all the way out into the cosmos and reveals precisely the shift human beings are now part of. If you haven't yet heard the recording called The Foundation, which precedes this one, I suggest to do that first so the story makes sense and you and your body can get the most of it so you can make your own lemonade. Before I open the information, I want to explain something. Part of the gain for you to hear my story is because you'll hear me refer to my body separately to the me, which is the energy that I am. That map meta-awareness perspective calls the individualized energy, which is the eternal aspect of a human being. That is what I know I am, different to what my body is. So you'll hear me say things like, my body's father, precisely because that differentiation is what grants you and your body the clarification and ability to start distinguishing clearly what is you as the eternal aspect and what your body is as the matter, the animal, and your human, plus reveals the real game you are playing on this planet as a human being. Also, in the recordings from now forward, I will share the memories with you by covering specific chunks of time. This is why I mentioned to listen to the first recording first, and I suggest you listen to the story in order, as chapters of a book that you'd read in the corresponding order the writer presented. Now, I invite you to get your body comfortable because today I am going to start dissecting the story. So, I am going to start at the beginning. My body's parents met very young, and from what I've gathered, their relationship started out with an exciting exchange, and I recognize where they complemented each other. I still remember coming down to be with my body's parents before her mother got pregnant with my body. I recall my excitement visiting them, and I enjoyed their social outings. I was just a ball of energy then. In telling you about it now, my body can sense how I live without her. In other words, when I don't have a body. I was able to read everything around at the same time, and I remember floating around through people completely undetected. It may not seem like much, but that remembrance set up the basis for how I have conducted her growth, her experiences, and how I awakened her senses to function in accordance to what I am that is connected to everything that is, because automatically linked to my sight comes the cognizance of what is correct that expresses physically as what we call nature on this planet. So now, having established that underlying background, I also want to share my body's environmental background because of how absolutely significant it has been in my experience with this particular body. First off, I want to mention that the individualized energy of a human being is not what we call the consciousness. What the individualized energy is in a human being is the witness and director of the body's consciousness. And the body's consciousness is dictated by the memory in the genes. That information in the genes originally comes from the experiences others who wore the genes before imprinted on them, meaning how those genes were charged or trained through repeated behavior from others who used those genes. Each gene is a strand of consciousness, just like each human is a cell of consciousness for the planetary consciousness. And each planet is for its solar system, and each solar system is for the galaxy. This shows you that neither you nor your body are the consciousness, and that you are in charge of directing it, and that your body is the result of what you weave through it, meaning the actions you carry out through your body. I hope you can see it. And now you get to see the real game we came to play with these bodies is the alchemy that allows it to update to the 5D quantic realms compliance, which is what I realized I needed to do with my own body when my body was 5. I'll cover that in the next recording. So now I'll share about the other components at play for the body's construction. The DNA that weaves the body gets activated in accordance to the story the individualized energy wants to experience with it, which is what gets inscribed in the heart. I don't know if you're aware that the heart is a scroll, and it keeps the memory of what you came to play out through the body. If you're a human being, of course, which is the difference with everything else called a human nowadays, because even the closest thing, which are clones, do not have this upgrading feature. They simply function according to the memory, the DNA they grew from and was charged with. So there's no directive connected to the universe from those bodies. In addition to the DNA, the body gets woven according to the physical and etheric energy from the environment it is developing in, stemming from the astrology that is expressing physically at the geographic place where it gets woven. I speak about the importance of knowing the body's astrological information in my course Genetic Cosmology, but for now here I can tell you it is deeply significant because of the way the body gets charged with that energy that then defines the body's personality. And that astrological component of my body's own expression has been a huge reason for my success walking my body into this 5D Earth compliance. I feel it is important for me to mention because it denotes the energy I have been weaving her living with, and it presents a proof for my connection to the present, to the degree that my body's actualized energy is reflected in her rebirth chart as well, that directly links to the one she grew up with. I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, and it is absolutely powerful to know about it, now that more people are moving into their body's butterfly stage. So I'll give you a general read of my body's original astrological chart. By original, I mean the chart that defined the original carbon-based body I got that grew in her mother's body. Her Sun and Pluto had less than 1 degree of separation. For those of you who know about planetary translation, you know that alone is huge because the Sun's position refers to the person's inner read of the external world and natural drive or expression. And Pluto is who oversees to tie the information of the entire solar system so it goes deep into the depth of everything to report to Sun, who then decides what to feed the planets with. That's why Pluto is who presents the eras. So that point alone speaks volumes about what this body was born to carry out. Then there's the dance with Venus I have had to manage, because this woman had her sun in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. Her rising sign was Libra, another prominent dose of Venus, and denoting that her automatic processing of her inner world was managed by the same energy that she naturally exuded. In other words, what you see is what you get for real. And her moon, a very important aspect in people generally, yet more so in women, was in Taurus, which is also ruled by Venus. So this little body, as I refer to her, was soaked with Venusian energy by the time she was born. Those three aspects alone describe my body's power to deal with the etheric realms for me to anchor the information I came to weave physically, which the double Libra shows, in a grounded manner of expression, which is what Taurus shows. Then there are a few other major influencers. Mercury's effect is also important because of how close it is to Earth, and her Mercury was in Libra, which allowed me to easily receive and digest through her the information I could pull in with that Libran structure. And her inner desire of how to communicate, which is Mercury, was dictated by Libra. So you can imagine a wisdom of relating through a filter of correctness, fairness, constant recalibration of what is not into harmonization and equality. Her Venus was in Leo, so a filter of I have come to shine my light. And her Mars was in Virgo, the guardian of organization and energetic accounting, and thus accountability. That soup, along with the memory in her DNA, is the energy I came to reign and direct to my accord. I was not aware of all those details when she was born, but I shared them now because they were the basis of what I had to deal with in accordance to what she was charged with. I don't recall through her now if this is the first time I've encountered this experience of walking a body through the metamorphosis human beings are experiencing now that has taken me from one expression and storyline into a completely different expression and storyline too. I do know that I have not previously done this with a body on this planet. I also know I provoked my body's metamorphosis on my own first, and then, because of the planetary shift and my relationship with the planet's individualized energy, that you have heard me refer to as Gaia. So now I can tell you, my body was born at a hospital in Bogota, Colombia, with me holding the remembrance and awareness that I am not my body, and that it is precious and I am in charge of her. So I need to take good care of her because it didn't come with extra or replaceable parts, nor they would regrow either. That I am to stay present with her consistently and direct her from her heart, meaning that my focus is to go by what her heart dictates. The sentiment was that following those directions would keep my body and I aligned to the source where I come from. That was the directive. She was not only the first child, but she was also the first grandchild on both sides. So her arrival was welcomed and celebrated. Apparently, even the nurses kept passing her around. But that joy only lasted until the day after my body was taken home, when the physical abuse started with a smack on the butt because everything was okay and you kept crying, my body's father explained to me many years later. Your diaper was clean. You had been fed, so you weren't hungry. The temperature was fine, but you wouldn't stop crying. So I gave you a smack and then you stopped. He calmly added, like explaining that if you have 2 apples and add 2 more, you end up with 4. Apparently, the day after that event, my body was choking and no amount of smacking was working, to the degree she started turning purple. So he took my body to the neighbor who was a nurse. She grabbed my little body, flipped it upside down, and started tapping her upper back. My body started coughing and breathing again. I don't remember that myself. My body's father gave me that information after my body fainted for some minutes when she was 14, letting me know that was the second time I scared him like that after I asked them when the first time was. The first 4 years of my body's life, I was going through the experience of getting to know and conduct this particular body. My body's father's individualized energy was very sweet and celebratory of this incarnated experience. The force of sovereignty in his lineage was emphatically conserved, which is why one of his main drives was to maintain and defend the sovereignty of personal expression to enjoy this living in relation to nature, which is one of the reasons I chose his DNA to carry out this mission here to support human beings to claim their body sovereignty. That individualized energy was tremendously persistent to manifest reality as it desired through its body. Fair, expressive, outgoing, social, disciplined, insistently focused. And that individualized energy was able to align with his body to articulate a vast Kundalini river that fed his body with vitality and the power to push through whatever limitations his body would face, an immense creativity to provoke on these planes the realities he wanted. Another reason his DNA was chosen to father my body is the high level of sensitivity that lineage carries. But that type of incarnated energy runs a very high risk of getting attacked to get hijacked by demons and alien energies, because the ability to land all that voltage through a body can be used as a fountain for the delicious source energy that feeds them the vitality they are not connected with, yet need to at least survive. And my body's father's individualized energy became and still is a mere puppet to demons, because it never learned to deal with them and instead chose to empower himself over others by allowing the demons through. And I can be so blunt and clear about that because I could clearly see how they dominated his experience, as I will tell you later on. Demons are individualized energies who were sent to care for this planet and all that got woven through it at the physical level. And instead, they chose to go against their duty and they abused their power that ended up creating creatures of their own detached from source energy, which is why they're called demonic. And when they found out that there was no pardon for what they had done, they chose to disconnect from source and conduct this planet according to their own design. That severance makes them unable to receive the consistent energy nourishment from source that all its creatures receive. And of course, they also do not have permission to receive a human body, because to get a body on this planet, the individualized energy makes a contract with life and Gaia. Gaia being the individualized energy who manages Earth. And I make that name distinction so that you can recognize when I refer to Gaia, which is a parallel of what I am to my body, than when I make reference to its physical aspect, that is Earth. I feel it's important to mention here that all physical expressions in the universe stemming from source derive from and are thus managed by the etheric realms. So the only way for demons to maintain their existence is through being parasitic, which translates into vampiric extortions for sustenance and possession for physical experiences. They infiltrate the body by making it seem like they come to give the body the strength they need to deal with what's going on in their environment, the latter being what demons set up on the planet to begin with, which is what I call the made-up matrix, that describes the system that degraded the expression of human beings who naturally come aligned to the 3D to function through the 2D perceptions of opposites those demons designed, and digesting information through a system that created severe confusion about what is real and what was invented. This is how most of the physical realities we are exposed to now are linked to demons, because everything we experience is a result of what human beings have created under their direction. We are the ones who constructed the buildings and work the banks and offices to move the money and permissions that direct the collective's experience, like the driver's license that needs to be renewed to draw money every so often, and all those type of documentation. The same thing with the little booklets they make us get so that we can cross the imaginary lines they set up to divide the land. The payments that need to be made for the use of a land a house is on, even when the house has been fully paid already. We are the faithful soldiers who kill under their discernment of who stays and who gets bombed. We are the ones who bought the story that evolution means butchering the trees that are the lungs of the air our bodies breathe. We destroyed nature and eradicated millions of people who lived in coherence with nature to monetize our exchanges, create buildings, medications to replace the actual medicines, slavery, religion, sexualize children, and distribute and enforce the application of the poisons that get added to food crops and the invented look-alike food products. We are the ones who have preferred the poisons, supported and delivered the supply of the inhibitors for the natural mutations that are the actual signs of true evolution. We are the ones who rob and lie and create the dangers that hurt other human beings under their direction, so our chance of living stays downgraded to a mere existence in the fear of survival. And we are the ones who idolize their puppets, who provide the sensory entertainment and misalignment to deviate our focus, our meaning the individualized energy, and even develop apathy to the correctness all human beings can feel through the body. We are the ones who carry out the system they created and implanted that has incarcerated us and reduced our natural magnificent expression into the thwarted, disgraceful, and superficial blubbering that has erased common sense and replaced it with today's ridiculous expressions. We are the ones ensuring the implementation of what is harmful to human beings. So I know speaking about psychopaths is part of my mission because of what I can see and the intimate relationship I have had dealing with people who I got to witness channel the demons that are part of our everyday society. And I see that most people are absolutely oblivious about how to recognize them or their presence in their personal experience. As a fact of the matter, most children are infected with imps who develop into full-blown demonic affairs, while their parents give the excuse that they behave like that because they're just children. I know speaking about psychopaths is part of my mission too because of my deep experience dealing with them. My body's caterpillar experience started out with a psychopath. The individualized energies who received bodies through mine were conceived with a psychopath. Of course, I didn't know that then, and I'll open up about that when I cover that time. And I closed the cocooning stage, graduating into my body's butterfly stage, witnessing how a narcissist evolved into a well-refined psychopath who saw and knew he was being run by demons, yet still chose them over doing the work to change, and then stole the work it took me literally a lifetime to anchor, copied my identity and story, and is now presenting it all as his and the channelings of Jesus and the ascended masters, and is now supported by many. Of course, because it's my information, which proves that it works. So, tying these to what I was saying regarding sensitivity, those are the people who get harassed most by demons, to renew or establish pacts with them to get empowered, because genes come charged with the energy of others who were, and the ones who are wearing those genes, who already made contracts with those energies, knowing and or not, and then get activated when the individualized energy activates those genes with the scenarios its body faces. That happens in an interfacing of the demons, imps, and alien energies with the body's nervous system, because the individualized energy agrees to have it conduct its body, again, knowingly and not, which is a lot easier than doing the work of going deeper into the body to soothe and direct it with correctness, regardless of the aggression it faces externally, which can get pretty severe, to get the individualized energy to fall to their demands. Somehow that I am unaware of, perhaps because he was the eldest child and only male, my body's father became a narcissist and had to have the world revolve around him, which of course, dealing with demons as he did, that energy of standing up for his own sovereignty became disfigured into the abusive control he exuded on the ones who allowed him. He grew up associating those energies as if they were who he is, as most people do, because most are not aware of what demons are and how they function, which I can see is part of the reason why my service is to tell my personal story, to prompt accurate awareness of how deeply infiltrated they are in people's existence. So even up until now, his excuse for aggression is, "That's just the way I am." I am sure you've heard that before. And has supported it with the saying, "A tiger's stripes don't change," which is a saying in Spanish to describe that people's temperament and actions are a fixed knee-jerk reaction that one ends up with and is therefore non-malleable. As you can hear, it's the perfect excuse and reason psychopaths use as the facade for their victimhood position. Those of you who have dealt with psychopaths know exactly what I am speaking about. That alone describes the contrast with my body's mother and the very fabric of all my work through this incarnation, because my job as the individualized energy has been to balance the charge in the genes I inherited from each parent, as is the work of all human beings and why what I offer can serve all human beings. And I love it when this happens, that by telling you my story, truth backs me up in my sincere drive like this. My body's mother's individualized energy had refined the way she presented her energy through her body. She was soft-spoken, sweet, kind, gentle with her environment and others. She endeavored to create beauty in every way she could, through her speech, her manners, cooking. She was very good with manual arts like sewing and embroidery and that kind of art. She was liked and appreciated by all who knew her. She was patient and determined, which prompted a remarkable creativity to resolve. She believed in goodness and carried it out. She felt comfortable in her own skin, so she didn't have to fill in the silence. Instead, she enjoyed absorbing everything that came with it. She sought to make the best of situations. She wove her internal beauty onto the external environment, and she was persistent to a fault. She was alone in Bogota, Colombia. I am unaware of how she ended up there from the city she was born and grew up in, which was at least 12 hours away then, so she had no one in Bogota, no family or other support, which also suited my body's father's control and abusive behavior toward her. And from what I have deciphered, she thought she could help him change because she believed in the goodness that she saw that his individualized energy was. But the longer they were together, the worse his control and jealousy issues flared out, which only got even worse as his lack increased with her presence. As he saw it, he owned her to do with as he wished. Which, in all fairness, back then, that's what the 2D ideology sold to men. You work and support your wife, and she is your possession. But he lived in the extremes of that ownership, and he was a closeted brat who wanted things the way he wanted them, when he wanted them, and if he didn't get them, he would throw a temper tantrum and make her pay for his dissatisfaction, even when it didn't derive from interacting with her. And because he calculated well his public appearance, he simply resorted to going home to empty his frustrations through aggression onto the woman who sincerely did care about him. Also very typical of psychopaths. After she got pregnant with my body, his toxic behavior continued, although he limited the physical abuse because he did want the baby. And looking at the situation from a wider lens, I can see how the demons tamed their expression also to ensure the baby's well-being, because children are yet another and powerful source of the best energy they can feed on, because they are completely open. And if the individualized energy is not situated well with a good hold on what is real, they are easily influenced, therefore an easy target. But his restraint ended right after my body was born, as I already mentioned. My body's father is one of the most self-centered people I have ever met. I was not allowed to be breastfed for more than a few months because it was an inconvenience for him, since her body was his to do what he wanted, and usually women don't like their breasts to be fondled during sex when they are breastfeeding. Studies can back me up on this. My body's father's genes were loaded with a well-practiced autodidactic nature that he fed from various angles, and thirsty for the most information I could gather to figure things out here on these planes. When my body's father came home, I'd ask him questions. He appreciated my curiosity and became my Google. According to my body's father, at least back then, all children were dumb and didn't know anything. So he used me to do a lot of things with him, which was good to promote a more peaceful environment in the house because it dissipated his energetic focus. However, there are two ways genes get activated. One is the activation the individualized energy gives the genetic pool, which is what directs the body's cellular weaving when it's forming in the womb. And the other is the activation the genes receive during the body's growth, external to the womb, until the individualized energy manages to individualize its body too from that energy, which are the child's caregivers. How that translated for me is that I was not only getting impregnated with his nervous system's distorted and erratic energy, which is the result of dealing with demons. It meant that his genes pool showed the predominant derivative for my body's growth and development. I talk about this in my course Genetic Cosmology. And in a later episode, I'll share with you what I did to counterbalance that effect in my body, because although that's not something I became aware of at the time, the effect started showing through expressions like developing the habit of nail biting by age 2 and displaying his strong character. I caught on pretty quick though, and I learned to sense temperaments well. I did my best to figure out what to say, when to say it, how to say it, what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. It was a full-time affair of diligent presence when he was around. So by the time my body's brother came into the picture, when mine was 19 months, I had a pretty good grasp on things. I knew my contract with his individualized energy was to lessen the blow for him, who had less experience incarnating here. And that's exactly what I did, to the best of my ability, of course. My body had learned to mirror my body's father to engage and distract him. Applied awareness and the use of the universal intellect develops the body's intelligence. And the individualized energy conducting my body's father was great at managing that weaving. And so am I. So this is where he enjoyed my presence and where I magnified keeping him entertained with me instead of with my body's mother or brother. So from early on, I became the apple of my father's eye, and although he didn't say it, I could read it from his body. My body's father became charmed with me because, although it was easy to manipulate with violence of every kind, it was a trophy for his ego that my body's expression was so much like his. My presence prompted a sense of pride in him about his offspring, because my expression was the type of child that people usually admired. I was considered a precocious child. I didn't recognize that I remembered things that other human beings usually don't, or didn't, because a lot of children do nowadays. But my body developed an agile cognizance, and I developed a great dexterity of expression, physical and verbal, in spite of the incredible restrictions of expression I had to deal with, which was that I could not express unless I asked and got permission. And the expression had to be within the correctness that an adult is to conduct. My body spent most of the time quiet, yet I was absorbing everything in her environment. My body's mother had taught me that my brother was my baby too, and as his older sister, I was to care for him and protect him. I did such a good job at entertaining my body's father that by the time my body's brother came out, he was allowed to breastfeed for longer and he was able to have more time with his mother because he wasn't competing for her attention with the father. That body was conducted by a really wonderful individualized energy who was clean of malice and had not had too many incarnations, which is common for children occupying the second birth in the family. So he knew his way around here, yet he was not as avid at reading out the energy, processing the information, or weaving it the way I did. He was like a regular child of back then. I share that now because eventually it served me well to have him as my brother, as I will cover on a later recording. So now, going back to what I mentioned about my body's mother being known as her husband's lucky charm, my father struck a job and a few deals that allowed him to buy a house for his family. Up until then, although limited, we all had access to external life such as his family, friends, neighbors, various stores, and much more. However, that move meant almost absolute isolation because we moved far in addition to not knowing anyone around, and since it was a developing neighborhood, there weren't many people around yet to begin with. That move and isolation gave my body's father an ego boost to freely express without restraint of what others may hear or think. And my body's mother became 100% his slave. He had managed to create the perfect jail for her, where she was controlled and abused to his demon's delight, which was unsatiable. So it intensified, not by a notch, but by a lot. Whatever restraint he would exercise before was completely gone. She had to have his permission to communicate with her own family. She could definitely not even go visit them. She couldn't even call anyone because back then, all phone calls were delineated by number and duration on the phone bill. And he would find out and make her pay the price if she did. She could only leave the house to go get food, for which she had to provide a detailed list of weight and price of every item bought so that she could give him account of every penny spent. And she had a designated amount of time to go out and get back or else. She was not allowed to have friends or to talk to neighbors. Absolutely no one was allowed to visit her under any circumstances, including his family, without his prior approval. She had to allow him sexually whenever and however he desired. She couldn't express herself the way she wanted, neither with him nor with anyone else, because if she revealed anything negative or that he even interpreted as negative about him, or his temperament, or their living style, it would result in payback when they got home. She had to cut her hair short because he didn't like long hair. She couldn't even have plants in the house because he didn't like them and they were a waste of water. She had to be overweight for his pleasure and because he was deeply polluted by jealousy. Jealousy and severe frustration of his own unfulfilled desires were the deepest ways he was managed by demons. And the or else part included beatings that ranged from getting the back of the hand, kicks, items being thrown at her and broken on her, direct punches aimed as the practice to the angled styles he witnessed in boxing matches. And there were 2 other styles, but I do not recall if there were tactics being used on her or not. Yet I suspect that they were, because he used them onto my brother's body and mine, which were all of the above, in addition to 1. Hitting us with a specific belt that was about 2.5 inches wide, with golden dome-like metal ornaments protruding, typical of the 70s style. And 2, making us get undressed down to the underwear to then go to the patio where a rope had been passed over the bearing beam for the tiles covering half of the patio. He would then bind us at the wrists with one end of the rope and made to tippy-toe to maximize our inability to move at will, as he pulled and fastened the other end of the rope. Then he proceeded to beat us up with the belt. So I don't know for sure if he did use the belt or not and hung her as well or not, but what I am sure about is that he beat her brutally on a regular basis. She did try to run away, which was really difficult for her because she had no income of her own and had to rely on whatever pennies she could patiently save in a way that he wouldn't notice or even suspect. But for her own survival, she tried. And he caught her and beat her up so bad that she was down for a few days, bruised from head to toe, and no one to help her heal in any way. His mother knew, his sisters all knew, his father knew, other people in the family knew, and no one did anything for her or for my brother and I. So my body's mother endeavored to survive. She lived in horrible fear, but she endeavored to seek beauty and comfort as best she could with what she got. I remembered she used to place my body on the counter that divided the kitchen from the dining area as she cooked. She let me smell the spices and played with me. And things didn't always have to be said. I learned the art of looks and the simplicity and beauty of being without having to talk. The art of patience to attain a result, like all the embroidery and sewing she did. The art of devotion and goodness and sweetness. The first 4 years of my body's experience were tough. But in all honesty, I didn't know how bad it was because my body's mother made things better for my brother and I, and she was my shield, as in literally. I remember well that my body's mother fought back as best she could against her husband's abuse onto my brother and me by throwing herself in front of him, begging him to spare us and to deviate his anger toward her and aim to fatigue him so that by the time he got to my brother and or I, the force would be lessened. For example, one strong memory I have of that is when my body was 3, almost 4, and a couple of friends came to visit, which was a huge exception in my house. They had been offered a snack. I remember my body's mother was cooking, and at one point, I picked up the plates the people had finished eating their snacks from, and one of them had a piece of gum on it. Up until then, I had never tried gum because my father prohibited it. So on the way to the kitchen, I picked it up and put it in my mouth. I know it's unsanitary, but the curiosity to figure out why people did it and what was so terrible about it that it was forbidden in my house won. My body's mom didn't notice, but a bit later, my body's father came to the kitchen to check how much longer it would take for dinner to be ready. Then he bent down, squeezed my body's arm, and with a yanking shake, quietly between his teeth, he asked, "What do you have in your mouth?" Lacking still the ability or corruption to lie, I opened my mouth and he saw the gum. He shook my body vigorously, and quietly between his teeth again, he told me, "Spit that shit out immediately." And the excitement of having visitors vanished as he whispered, "We'll deal with this after the guests leave." He simply returned to talk to his guests like nothing had happened. He was amazing at that, while leaving my mother and I freaking out in the kitchen over his pending sentence. I started crying quietly because if I were heard, he saw it as a disgrace to him personally, that his family was not picture perfect. My body's mom soothed me as best she could and asked me, "Why didn't you swallow it?" And I realized then that was an option I had not even seen, but I took note. As I share these now, my body remembers the gross feeling of nervousness that used to soak her with fear, twisting her guts afraid of the beating she had coming, reading that her mother was feeling the same. the joy of company having turned into another way we got damned that day. He fed off the fear both my mother and I were experiencing, and that we could not enjoy the gathering because of what was coming after. He loved knowing that he had that power over us. And pay attention, because that is how demons dominate over others. That's the art that psychopaths develop. The silence and control to appear calm and let the fear brew so that the demons can feed from the energy drain they get from their prey. Sure enough, and without delays, after the guests left, he turned to me to deal with our pending situation. Like an eagle grabbing its prey, my mother grabbed my tiny body then and ran upstairs to their bedroom. But he caught up with us before she could close the door. Inside the room, there was a big armoire against the wall, and my mother shoved me behind her, between the armoire and the wall, triangulating her body with the two, and extended her arms and hands straight next to her body, shielding mine from his fury. He screamed at her to get out of the way as I grabbed her close, hiding behind, looking at him through the slit between her body and her arms, spewing out his venom onto her, and then he started to smack her face too. But the punch in her stomach folded her over, and he finally got to my body. That's where the memory stops for me. So I don't remember the beating my body got, but I am glad my body recalls that because it's one of the few memories I remember her being alive. I remember once my body's mother drank poison. My body was 4 then. I knew her well, so I was aware of how she tolerated pain. Remember, I could read other people's bodies already. That day, I noticed she was holding her tummy and was writhing from physical pain. I was deeply concerned for her and did what I could to soothe her, like I had learned from her. At some point, she became incoherent, and I started freaking out. I knew we weren't supposed to use the phone unless it was of severe importance, so I ran downstairs and called the father. A secretary answered, and I asked to speak with him. He answered with surprise and disguised anger because he was at work. But I quickly asked to be forgiven for interrupting his day, but that my mom was not doing well, and that she was saying things I could not understand now, so I decided to call him. He instructed me to go to the kitchen and boil some water, and give it to her as hot as she could take it without burning her, and that he was on his way. I don't recall any other details about that situation, but I know she was fed up of the mistreatments she did nothing to instigate, and the horrendous beatings she got and witnessed her children suffer too, for which she could do nothing to impede, and had no one to save any of us from it. I know before drinking the poison she had tried to escape with my brother and I, but she got caught, and that didn't go so well. With the patience and resolve she sewed, stitch by stitch, and the detailed care she made us meals with, she planned her escape alone, merely aiming for survival at that point, leaving to resolve at a later time how to come back for her children. She prepared everything for my birthday, and included presents for my brother too. About a week before my body's 5th birthday, she packed to go back home, and left my brother and I with a neighbor she had gotten to know and trust, and headed to her mother-in-law's place. I believe she went to say bye and get some money from her or something, before heading to the bus station. Somehow, I believe it was that he called her at home, and without an answer, he went looking for her, just to find no one. Some years later, I was told by his mother that he went looking for her. I wouldn't doubt he was aggressive with her to get information, and he ended up catching up with my mother at the station. He drove her home, and they were alone because my brother and I were still at the neighbor's. He had developed the habit of taking off his suit jacket and hanging it on his chair, as well as rolling his shirt sleeves to avoid bloodstains. As my body's mother saw that, she ran up to the bedroom, closed and locked the door, reached up for a small revolver he had purchased to safekeep him because back in the day, there were no bank transfers, and he would manage his clients' payments in cash, which were large sums of money because he worked in customs. So a good briefcase and a revolver were his safety measures. Without hesitation, she pressed the trigger of the loaded gun before he could tear the door down to hit her again. Unfortunately, it didn't unalive her because the bullet was too small and it wasn't her time to go. She was taken to the hospital where she laid in a coma for a few days. The doctors suggested to pray for her to go because the bullet had bounced around in her head and had destroyed her brain, so she would not function normally if she lived. My body's father was taken to jail because he was suspected of the crime and had to be tested. My brother and I were picked up by family, completely oblivious of what had happened. We were just excited at all the time we got to spend with the neighbor and then heading over to grandma's to stay over. Once there, we were told that our mother had been hit by a car and that her head had hit the sidewalk and was at the hospital. I don't recall seeing her then. I just recalled she died 4 days before my body's birthday. And instead of a celebration, I got to witness her body being prayed for. I remember my body's ignorance to the depth of the situation. She was taken by the smell of so many beautiful flowers in the room and having so many people around. I also don't remember her father being around. I don't know if he was still in jail or what, but my body felt excited about everything she was experiencing. I recall at one point asking my body's youngest aunt, who was only 11 or 12 years older than my own body, if she could pick me up so I could look at my mother. My body remembers the pressure from the grip of her arm under her belly and her effort to pick up my body up. Her head had been wrapped like a nun's with a white cloth. She looked at peace, and my body appreciated that. But I could feel her energy was not there. My body's father, a widow at 28 with 2 little children, and a bedroom full of his wife's blood splashed everywhere, was in no condition to care for my brother and I. So he left us under his mother's care until further notice. For today, I am pausing the story here to continue in the following recording. If you have any questions, please leave them below if you're in YouTube and in the channel's group if you are in Telegram. Also, I am presently offering a class called Reclaim Your Body Sovereignty, which is what I did when my body was 9 years of age that will be part of the section I cover in the following recording. Reclaiming my body's sovereignty flipped my body's experience around and put everything under my command. So that's what I designed for you as the first class for your body's genetic clearing and alignment. In the class, I provide the 3 game changers in your experience as a human being that offer you a return to a heartfelt wholeness. First, by learning what a human being is from a quantic epigenetic perspective, which means the entirety of the body. That includes the electromagnetic field. 2, realize what has been happening on Earth and how it has been affecting human beings, because I am able to see inside of my body. And because I have been directing her and the way that her senses have developed and my ability to read her, I can actually see how the blossoming of those mutations have happened. And that allows me also to identify that in the external environment and other people. So I can give detailed reviews of what has been happening, which is what I give during that second section. And in the third, I guide you through the process to reclaim your body's sovereignty within awareness. You get to install your energy through your body in a way that you are able to see. So not connected to the 2D anymore, but upgraded to the 3D. That class is for sale, and I will leave the link below for you to sign up if you wish, which I highly recommend. Not just for me to sell the class, but for you because I've already done it, and I am here already with my body, and my desire is to offer these for your gain as well. I am including the link below to my other YouTube channel, Off My Cuff, that I designed to share the information from where If You Get Lemons concludes, which is from the moment I re-entered my body's butterfly stage. on February this year. That is the physical reality where my body lives in now. So from then forward, and where I open up about my experiences with my body's living in this new life story, in real time, hence the name, Off My Cuff. For now, thank you for joining me on this journey to unravel this love story based on truth, where I am invoking the justice for humanity that we deserve. Thank you for your presence in If You Get Lemons. I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.